Alon, I texted you this earlier this week, but I'll say it live on the podcast right now. You think it's time for the Raiders to fire Josh McDaniels and hire Lincoln Kennedy as head coach?
As a fan, no, to hire Lincoln Kennedy as head coach. I love Link, but I don't know if we should. The Raiders should replicate what the Colts are trying to do. But you know what? It would be great for this one game.
This one game? Why is that?
Just the storyline. Two former offensive linemen who have zero to no, really coaching experience. Although Jeff Saturday did coach in high school, so he
That's all
does
you
have some
need.
experience. That's all you need, right?
Apparently, for I knew the name of the team, but I'm not gonna look it up now, and I don't really care. We'll get all into it today. Especially, this is gonna be a lot of Raider talk today, so everybody strap in, Raider Nation. Just your opinion, man. Midweek show. Alon filling in for Steven. I see Ernie in the chat already asking, no, Steven. Steven is going to join us on the Sunday shows. With my schedule and Steven's schedule, it's hard to do this stuff during the week. If Steven can join me during the week, we will do it. But if not, Alon's happy to fill in. So Steven's still a part of the podcast. No questions about that. But when our schedules don't line up, Alon is going to fill in. So Steven will be back on Sunday and Alon filling in today. And I'm glad Alon's with me because we got a lot of Raider shit to talk about. We'll talk about everything from the game itself this past week, another 17-point lead just blown. We'll talk about the Raiders' upcoming game against the Fighting Jeff Saturdays. We will discuss Prop 27 that did not pass in California, and it's Alon lives in Las Vegas, so he reaps all the benefits. And we'll react to all the Week 9 games. But Alon, just your quick reactions, man. Raiders lose again. They are 2-6, and they lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this season that was supposed to be building off of a playoff season a year ago, they went 10-7 through all of the bullshit, as I put it, with Henry Ruggs and John Gruden, Damon Arnett. Now the Raiders in the offseason, they decided, they got through all that, but they made the playoffs, won their last 4 games, went 10-7, unfortunately lost the Cincinnati Bengals in the first round of the playoffs. And then this offseason, they upgrade, quote, with Josh McDaniels, a move that I did not think was going to happen, but it did because I thought Josh McDaniels was going to be the coach in waiting for the Patriots. And he decided to take the Raider job. And he got his guy, Dave Ziegler. And they went all in. They made some big swings. I'm not going to say they're misses. One of them's definitely not. I love Davante Adams. But they made some big swings with acquiring Chandler Jones and Davante Adams. And this season was supposed to be, there's a lot of disappointing teams this year, but the Raiders were supposed to be one of those competing teams, and they are 2-6, and they lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars after having a 17-point lead. This is the third time this season that they have blown a 17-point lead. In their history as a franchise, they have blown 17-point leads 8 times. This season alone, they've done it 3 times. It's a massive disappointment. I am not ready yet to say let's fire Josh McDaniels, but I do understand all of the anger and frustration with Raider Nation. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of anger, frustration. There's a lot of Raider fans who saw 10 wins last year, and it didn't matter that a lot of them came in the last minutes, the dying embers of a lot of football games. It didn't matter that there were a lot of close games like that. It was 10 wins, so with an upgraded head coach, someone or a perceived upgrade, someone who's not an interim, someone who has experience in big games as a play caller. Josh McDaniels, okay, didn't work out in Indianapolis or in Denver. Had a cup of coffee in Indy, but it didn't work out in either of those places. Figured, okay, he's got more experience. He's more mature now. He's been learning under Belichick how to be more of an organizational leader because he's got the offensive side down, and it just hasn't worked. And 3 games where they've had leads of at least 17 points, so 2 with 17, one where it was 20-0 against the
Mm-hmm.
Arizona Cardinals. You lose all 3 of those games, and the commonality between all 3 of those games is the team starts very hot in those games. It has started very hot, and then when it's gone to the second half or later in the game, an adjustment hasn't been made. And with the exception of that Chiefs game, in the Chiefs game, I think they responded pretty well that came down to the wire. They lost by a point. It could have gone either way. They dialed up a blitz beater, and Renfro and Adams run into each other. Maybe could have just run the ball. But let's take the other two, Jaguars and the Cardinals. So let's look at the most recent, the Jags. The fact that your defense is not able to even hold up their end of the bargain. I know the offense was dormant in the second half. They scored a whopping 3 points just about. But you're going against Trevor Lawrence, who I think is getting a lot better, and Doug Peterson's a good head coach. He's won a Super Bowl for a reason, so that team's always going to keep playing. But the fact that you invested this money into Chandler Jones, he looks like he is well past his prime, or first maybe schematically he's just not able to get free. But the defense not able to hold up their end of the bargain. The game plan completely switches to try to get the run game established, which is fine. And Devontae Adams, I mean, we can get into this. He kind of aired his frustrations. It was working going through the air. I was going off in the first half, and the offense was clicking on all cylinders in the passing game. That's great, but there is a point when you are up 17. I don't care what team you are, you should go to a run game and try to wear the clock down, and then really try to seal up an easy victory, or what you think should be an easy victory. They haven't been able to do that in these games. Part of it's on the defense. A lot of it, though, is on the offense, and I would say the rhythm of the game, or the feel for the game that Josh McDaniels has at times as a head coach. He's very sporadic in terms of what he wants to do. It could be 12 passes in a row, and then it's 10 runs in a row. And that's fine if you want to do those things. And he always talks about being balanced, and that offense does work best when it's balanced. But you do have to look at some things and go, wow, the offense, was raiding everything through the air, and they just totally switch They switch tactics. They go on the ground, and things don't work out. That offensive line is shaky in a lot of respects. They've been better at run blocking than they have at pass blocking this season, but the first half looked pretty good against the Jaguars. So yeah, I mean, there's a litany of things to point to. You could say the roster construction's not there yet. The offensive line is subpar. Everybody can believe that. Darren Waller's out, which seems like every week, and that really hurts them. Renfro is not the same guy he was in the past a couple of years of Gruden's offense. So there's a bunch of differences. You can definitely see that Derek Carr is not as comfortable in this offense regarding his grasp of the playbook and what he's trying to do. They are slow in and out of the huddle. His reads at the line are a little different. But, I mean, these are all baked in excuses. At the end of the day, you have a 17-point lead. You have a double-digit lead going into the second half of a lot of these games. And instead of you building upon it, or at least preserving it and really eroding the game away, you're blowing these leads. And that is on the coach. That's on not just Josh McDaniels as a head coach. It's on his coordinators too. It's on his assistants. It's everybody who has a hand in making that pie there on how to win games. And he talks about playing a complete game, but maybe for him, it has to be about coaching a complete game.
No, I'm with you, Alon. I don't know what's up with Josh McDaniels, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But just as far as the game itself, yes, they were up 17-0, and going from Devontae Adams catching one pass for 3 yards or a week ago, to then going to 10 catches for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. Most of it in the first half. It seemed like the Raiders were going to dominate, but it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle for the offense to do something in the second half for multiple games. But just looking at the stat sheet here real quick, Hunter Renfro targeted 4 times for 3 catches and 26 yards. I don't understand how Josh McDaniels can't find a way to get these guys more touches and have more creativity in the offense. And I know a lot of teams this season that have new head coaches or new quarterbacks, but that's not the case for the Raiders. They've had the same quarterback now since 2014. I don't know why the offense is not doing what it should be doing. You could say the same thing about Mike McDaniel in Miami. They built a whole new offense for Tua Tagovailoa. They brought in Tyreek Hill, and they're doing everything that he wants them to do. He had a game plan, and that offense is firing on all cylinders. Tyreek Hill's leading the league in receptions and receiving yards. I don't know why they can't be the same Devontae Adams having a great season, but I don't know why he can't scheme it up to have Hunter Renfro catch as many passes as he did a season ago. And it does not help that Darren Waller is not playing, but I am frustrated with that, and I think a lot of Raider fans are frustrated with Darren Waller not playing. He had some quotes today. I'll read them a little later, but Hamstrings are a tough thing. It's ridiculous that the Raiders just can't get an offense going. And like my example with the Miami Dolphins, their defense is not great. They give up a lot of points. They gave up a shit ton of points to the Chicago Bears a week ago, but they kept going. Their offense just keeps scoring. If your Achilles heel is showing in a game, like, with the Raiders, their offensive line is not the best, and their defense is not the best. That's apparent right now. This illusion of complexity, I don't know what the hell it is, but I tell you, I say this week in, week out, the one thing it lacks glaringly is a pass rush, and it does not have one whatsoever. So yeah, the Raiders' biggest problems are their defense and their offensive line, and you got to find ways to counteract that. And the best thing to do that with a poor defense is having a great offense. And this offense is not even in the same you know stratosphere as the offense that we saw back in 2016. I thought this team was going to be maybe even like the highest scoring Raider team of all time with Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfro. But the fact that they just can't muster anything in the second half or mustard, I should say, not mustard. If they can't do anything in the second half is just ridiculous. I think that Josh McDaniels has a hard time. This has been a criticism of Gruden, but we also, Gruden has his, first 15 plays, and then he's got to adapt after that. There's always been, he does well in the first half and not so well in the second half. I think the same thing is for Josh McDaniels. He does not adapt well in the second half. He goes in with a game plan and he sticks with it. And sometimes you need to adapt. You need to adapt. You need to go on the fly and figure out, what are we doing wrong? Why can't we get the ball to Devontae Adams more? Why can't we get the ball to Hunter Renfro more? And I don't know. It may be on Derek Carr too. It may be on Derek Carr. Last week he had a wide open Amir Abdullah in the end zone, and that ball was really underthrown. And it was kind of the same wheel route that you saw week one with Brandon Bolden, and he threw that beautifully. But for whatever reason, he couldn't get it to Amir Abdullah there, and that would have given you, was that in the first half or the second half? Do you remember that play I'm talking about?
I know exactly the play you're talking about, and instead it's underthrown. It hits the DB in the back.
Yep.
And I can't remember if it was in the first or second half, but we've seen Carr make that throw before. He made it a couple of times last year. Well, he's already made it once this year to Bolden, but also made it a couple times last year to Kenyon Drake, who was on the Raiders roster last year. So it's not that he can't make that throw. I don't know if he just misgauged it, mistimed it, got a bad release. I have no idea. Or maybe he thought, Amir's a little shorter. I need to ease up on this because he's not going to be able to grab it in the back of the end zone. Whatever the idea was or whatever the process was behind it, it didn't work out.
No, and that play occurred right before the second half, with 55 seconds left. The Raiders settled for a field goal, so it's 20-7, and he could have made it 24-7 with that throw right there. They just lose opportunities for them to extend the lead. It happens quite a bit, like it happened in the game against the Chiefs. There was a time where they could have extended the lead right before half, go for it on fourth down, instead they kick the field goal. Their defense is a problem in the second half, too. They're not getting anything from Chandler Jones. Max Crosby is the only guy that gets a consistent pass rush. And if you want to rebuild the defense, I don't mind that. Like, I had questions about it going in. I'm not a big fan of their secondary. I think Trayvon Merrick is fine. Or no, sorry. Who's Merrick? What's Merrick's first name? Safety? Trayvon, yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of Trayvon Mullen or whatever. There's so many different guys that have been on this team in the last year. There's so many like revolving doors. I mean, we just saw Jonathan Abram get cut this week. That's a thing that is, a big deal to me, is the fact that John Gruden and Mike Mayock made all these picks and all these selections, and Josh McDaniel and Dave Ziegler in their first years are just cutting guys just right off the roster. First round picks. Alex Leatherwood gone right before training camp or right before the season. They just cut him. No one even wants to trade for him. Jonathan Abram, they couldn't get a deal with him done before the trade deadline, and they just cut him a couple days ago, and now he's on the Green Bay Packers. But it's just kind of embarrassing, and you can't tell me that this whole roster needs a rebuild. No, this is not. We're not going down that road again with John Gruden in his first year in 2018, where he got rid of Michael Crabtree and a bunch of guys and wanted to rebuild the whole thing, trading away Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper. This team can win, but it could be just the coaching or it could be. I don't know what it is, to be completely honest. I have no idea why this team is not winning. You got to put the blame on Josh McDaniels a little bit. You got to put the blame on Derek Carr a little bit. It's it's frustrating when every time he has a new head coach, there is a learning process, and that's a lot. That's the case for a lot of quarterbacks. But at the same time, if you are a starting quarterback in your ninth or whatever season Derek Carr is in now, you gotta just kind of show us a little more, man. Like this was supposed to be the season. This was supposed to be it, man. And they're 2-6. I'm honestly baffled by this. And then again, some people could be like, "Well, it's the Raiders." I don't believe in that shit where it's always like, "Well, it's the team, whatever team at, well, it's the Jets, and the Jets are doing well this season." But like
It
they
used to
always,
be, well, it's the Bills.
yeah, or like I'm kind of surprised the Detroit Lions are as bad as they are this season. There's a lot of teams that I'm surprised by. The Colts and how terrible they are. The Rams, Packers, Buccaneers. They and it may just be the biggest commonality with all those teams of why they're not performing well this season is that I think a lot of teams substituted having big, shiny offensive weapons instead of improving offensive line play. I think offensive line play in the NFL has been just piss poor this season. I think there's only a handful of teams that have good offensive lines: Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles, the Seattle Seahawks, the New York Giants, and the New York Jets. And those teams are winning right now. I think that the Raiders, we had questions about their offensive line going into the season, and instead they focused on their first two draft picks to be on Devontae Adams. You make that move every day of the week, but it's just not it's not doing well for them. It's not like they have the same offensive line issues that the Bucks have or the Rams have, but I don't get it, man. And our guy Aram hit me up today and said, I think that Josh McDaniels is like Norv Turner. He's a great offensive coordinator, but just not cut out to be a head coach. And I don't know about that yet. Um, Obviously, his record with the Denver Broncos was bad. He had a great start. I think the Broncos started 6-0 in 2009, and then they shit the bed the rest of the way, going 8-8. And then he got fired in the middle of the season the following year when it came out that he was doing the New England Patriots thing where he was filming people on the sidelines. So we don't know about Josh McDaniels. It could just be that this guy is just not very good as a head coach. I'm not ready to yet to say that, but it is alarming to me that this team is not firing on all cylinders in his first year. I you know there's I just don't think there should have been a grace period. I think that they should have been good right away. And I know that's a lot to ask for, but it may just be the frustrations of this team not being good and there was so much hype around them at the same time, but I don't know, man. I think that there's a lot of questions to ask for with how bad this team is performing.
There was not supposed to be a grace period whatsoever. That was never part of the equation. That wasn't part of, excuse me, that wasn't part of Mark Davis's calculation. That definitely was not part of the new players who came in and got signed. That wasn't part of their calculation or estimation of the situation. That wasn't supposed to be a thing. Josh McDaniels has come in. McDaniels come in. He's taken a team that won 10 games, went to the playoffs last year with a battered roster and a litany of problems, and they've been downgraded. I mean, they've been downgraded to 2 wins and a boatload of losses now, 3 of them with 17 or more point blown leads. But I'm not ready to say Josh McDaniels is a bad head coach either. I am willing to say, though, that he has a lot of adaptation, like you used that word earlier, adapt. He
Mhm.
has a lot of adaptation and evolving to do right now. I think some of it as well is on Derek Carr in terms of, I get it, there is a learning period, but you're 8 games into the season now that you've played, and if this week against the Colts, I don't see you with a. I'm not expecting you to know the offense like you did year 3 of Gruden's offense, or um, even in 2016 after a few years with the same group. But I am expecting you to have, if an A is being a maestro, or a master of the offense, I expect you to have a solid B somewhere at a B, somewhere where the play that's being called, you understand what's got to happen, you know where to get the ball to. That's one part of it. Another part of it, I go back to McDaniel here, is it seems like McCoy or McDaniel out in Miami is a great example. Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, they're also great examples of this. Brian Dable in New York, they find ways to easily. Andy Reid does this as well. Easily, it seems with ease to scheme players open. I
Mhm.
don't see a lot of that with Josh McDaniel. I don't.
Nope.
You know, there's been a few plays. Maybe it's a pass back, some type of flea flicker type player, big misdirection where something's wide open. It happens every once in a while. Right now it's about once every 2 to 3 games, but I don't see it on a consistent basis. I don't see there's. It doesn't seem like there's a goodie bag of plays that he can go to where it's like this is instantly going to get Devontae open. This is how we're going to beat
Mhm.
double bracketing on the outside where safety's shadowing him and he's got a corner on him as well. Or this is how we scheme Hunter Renfrow open. And Renfrow is not even that hard of a guy to scheme open. You give him a route, you kind of let him run it, and he does his own thing. So
Mhm.
maybe he's not being allowed the flexibility in the offense to do what he needs to do to be successful, like he did in Gruden's offense, where he specifically, I mean, there were reports about that where he said, "Look, uh, he said, I'm kind of breaking the rules here. I'm not really running all those routes that I'm supposed to be running. I'm kind of getting myself open." There were some reports about that. So, it could be things like that, but I don't see the easy yards in this offense. I don't, unless it's Josh Jake, and even his yards aren't easy. A lot of times he's being contacted right at the line of scrimmage and he makes something out of nothing. So, yeah, I'm not ready to fire sale the team. One of the things that's lucky for the Raiders is the players that are very desirable for other teams. They're under big contract money. So, with the exception of really Derek Carr, there's not really a single one that you could cut, wave away, and be okay with. And he'd be very tough to offer in for a trade as well with the new contract he just got. So, for the Raiders, I guess that's a plus and a minus, but I would say it's more of a plus with roster stability. But back to that coach, I think it's an organizational thing. I definitely think it is on him to get his defensive coordinator Patrick Graham to be able to do the right things to put his players in position to succeed. Trayvon Merrick, we mentioned him earlier in the broadcast. He's looked like a shell of himself. He looked like he was going to be a very, very, very solid coverage safety. And this year, he is getting lost in coverage. He's
Mhm.
trailing behind offensive players. Averett, who I like as like a third or fourth cornerback option, and that's kind of what he was with the Ravens. He had some spot starts, but he does not have the stuff to be a starter. Rocky Sin has been their best addition on the defensive end, I would say. I don't think there's any question. Maybe you could say Daron Harmon. He's had a few pop plays,
Yeah.
but I would say it's Rocky Sin. He has proven to be very solid, but if they could probably do it over again, they'd probably not go with Rocky Sin and keep Yannick Ngakoue because at least he's going to get at least a sack or two. So yeah, I mean they've made some mistakes already. It's a growing period, but the head coach McDaniel he has to be able to get this team to close out games, and I don't know what he has to do to be able to do it. It's not like they don't know how to close out games because they've done it in the past, but under his leadership, they're not able to get the job done. So maybe that means the players need to really say, look, these kinds of things aren't working for us, coach, and because they're all professionals at the end of the day, and the players know what they have to do to win, and the coach should know, in theory, what they have to do to win as well. But he's not leading them to do it. So the players got to do their thing, coaches got to do their thing. But as simple as this is about as simple as I can make it. Even if you have great players, it's like Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, guys like that on offense, they can't overcome bad coaching. That's something Nick Saban said, and it's very true. And right now, they're being coached very poorly. The leadership on the team and the coaching with regards to coaching is very bad.
Let me ask you this, and I don't agree with this question, but I'm going to ask it. Do you think that they should have gone with Josh McDaniels over Rich Bisaccia?
Without a doubt. I liked Rich Bisaccia a lot as a special teams coordinator, well respected across the league. He's had a lot of stops in a lot of places. He's in Green Bay now. But when you have the opportunity, I kind of feel like they knew, or at least that they were thinking, Mark Davis was and the team was, of
Mhm.
what they could get out of Rich Bisaccia as a head coach option. And instead of going to that level, they wanted to go a couple of levels higher, and they thought that was Josh McDaniels, and that's the right move. You should always make that.
I agree. That's the trend of the league right now is going with offensive-minded coaches as your head coach. And I Josh McDaniels was ever sought after for the longest time. We'll talk about the upcoming game this week, but we all know about what he did with the Colts. He was going to coach Andrew Luck. I'm assuming that he got some intel about Andrew Luck's health and his future, and he said, I don't want any part of that. So he turned down the job, and we all thought it was going to be a coach and waiting situation. Like, if you ever seen the two Bills with Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells, it was going to be Josh McDaniels waiting in the wings for Bill Belichick to retire, and he was going to be New England Patriot head coach. That's why I didn't think the move was ever going to be made when he was going to go interview with the Browns or all these other teams. I was like, he's just doing that just to get intel on other teams. And I never thought he was going to join the Raiders, but I'm assuming with Mark Davis firing Mike Mayock and John Gruden a season ago, that the name Dave Ziegler came up, and Josh McDaniels just couldn't pass this opportunity to be the head coach of the Raiders. And they got all the pieces, they got Davante Adams and they got Chandler Jones. And I'll say this about Chandler Jones. It was kind of a misleading 10.5 sacks a season ago. We've said this multiple times.
Mhm.
He got 5 sacks in the first game of the season against the Tennessee Titans, and then then he just got 5 sacks the rest of the game, or the rest of the season. I don't know what he's capable of anymore. And it could just be that we'll see what happens the rest of the season, but he got a massive contract, and obviously NFL money is not guaranteed. It depends on which contracts you get and which player you are, but it may be time to cut ties with Chandler Jones after this season. It's just not worth the amount of money he's making and the little output he's putting in. As far as just, the rest of the defense, which players would you keep, Alon, at this point? Max Crosby to me. Trayvon Merrick, I think, can improve. It's only his second season. He seems a little lost right now, but he was impressive to me his first season. Besides that, honestly, like Rocky Sin's been a good player.
Denzel Perryman, maybe.
Yeah, Denzel Perryman, Nate Hobbs, who's been injured.
Nate Hobbs, yeah.
Besides that, I mean, they cut Jonathan Abram today, and I honestly was never really a big fan of his. I thought he was just, trying to be like Bob Sanders every play, just make the big hit, but then get injured himself. Not great in coverage. I think that they can rebuild the whole defense, and that's what I would do. That's the big thing that I think that they need to do going forward is they just need to rebuild the whole defense because it's stopping nobody.
If they do decide to rebuild the entire defense, which is something they're going to need to do, they're going to have 2 approaches to it. Probably the quicker way to get better is to instantly upgrade your pass rush. So that means they're going to have to.
You have to
fortify that defensive line. And if you do have a guy like Max Crosby, for all intents and purposes, is one of the best edge players in the league, it makes a lot of sense to upgrade around him. The other direction you could go is you could solidify your back end. You could try to go find some cover corners, but those generally are very expensive if you get them in free agency, or they take longer to develop when you draft them. So, yeah, building the defensive line has to be paramount. Has to be the first thing they do.
Can I interrupt you real quick? Not always the case, because I think the reason the Jets are doing well this season is because of Sauce Gardner.
Okay.
From day one, he has been their best defensive player right now. He's a rookie. He may be defensive rookie of the year. He's right up there with Traquan Woolen with the Seahawks. A big reason the Seahawks are winning games right now is because they drafted a very young defense and it's playing well right now. So, I know it's tough to rely on young corners and young defensive backs, but Pete Carroll has done it in the past. I think Robert Saleh is doing it very well right now with the Jets. If you scout very well, I mean, we're seeing it right now. Offensively, I'm not impressed with the Jets. I'm not impressed with the Giants. The Seahawks, their running game's fine, but, Geno Smith's playing well right now, but I don't count on any of these quarterbacks if they all make it to the postseason. I don't believe in any of them, to be completely honest. And maybe that's just on me. But, yeah, I think that, they didn't have many draft picks because of the trade for Davante Adams, but obviously offensive line is a big thing going forward. But if you scout well, they can improve this defense in many different ways, numerous ways they can improve this defense.
Yeah, you're right about that, and maybe I'm a little unfair in saying that it's hard to draft guys day one and bringing them in as defensive backs. That's just kind of my opinion on it. I think it's easier to upgrade the front 7 area rather than the back 4.
Could be.
But that's just my philosophy. That being said, I think Rocky Sin is a player you keep. I even think Everett's a player you keep, but not as a starter. He's a guy who's, depth there, kind of like Amik Robertson. He's not an every down guy. He's a guy that you keep there for depth. But they need to upgrade the defense. They need pass rush. That would probably solve half of their problems immediately. If they were able to consistently heat up the quarterback. What's amazing is they were a middle of the road defense last year under Gus Bradley, who plays an extremely conservative style of defense. They go to Patrick Graham, who does dial up more blitzes. And when you watch them in their rush lanes, when they're trying to collapse the pocket or get back there on a quarterback, when they call a blitz, I mean, with the exception of the guy who's now gone, Jonathan Abram, he seemed to be the only one who had a nose for getting through. They're just running into each other. And I mean, it's causing them more problems than good. It's causing them more harm. It's really hurting them. So that is definitely a schematic thing. That's also a coaching your players type thing. So that's on Patrick Graham. But yeah, rebuilding this defense has to be very, very important for them going forward. Obviously, they're stuck with what they have right now. Chandler Jones is one of those things where unless he absolutely turns back into old Chandler Jones, like 3 or 4 years ago, 4 years ago, Chandler Jones really, then that's a guy that you part ways with and you try to get younger or just better, really better and faster on the defensive front. So, yeah, I mean, that would help them a lot. It would take a lot of stress off the offense, but as badly as Raider Nation probably wants this defense to be good because they have not really seen a good defense in a long time. They built this team to be explosive offensively, and they're not getting it done on that end. Yeah, for a while they were the number 3 offense in the league points wise before they played the Saints, and they're fringe, top 10 area now. But it's not consistent. It's not. It's a lot of it's they run up the score a bit on the Texans. They do a few things here and there, but it's just they're not scoring enough points, and they're not scoring enough points when they need to. Their second half scoring is abysmal. They're a terrible second half team. And yeah, building the defense will help that a lot because if you get a lead in the first half, at least you can rely on the defense to preserve part of it for you. But they're going to need to go out and help Max Crosby. And I'll just say this last point on the defense. If they are going to rebuild this entire defense, which it looks like they're going to have to do, they need to do it with Max Crosby in mind. They need to figure out how do we make this guy most effective and how does he make everybody else most effective. So get him another pass rusher and get some pressure up the middle.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Chandler Jones, through the first 8 games of the season, only a half a sack. So
it's that he shares with Cleveland Ferrell.
Yeah. So he's as good as Cleveland Ferrell right now.
Yeah.
Alon, I agree with you. And Josh McDaniels has said this all season that the Raiders have never have not played a complete game this whole season. And I agree with that. There are games where the defense plays well and the offense doesn't do anything. There's games where the offense does well and the defense doesn't do anything. It's never a full 60 minutes of football. And it's always like, even when the Raiders were up 17-0 and then the Jaguars scored, it just never felt like they were in control of the game at all. And the second half, they couldn't stop the run with Travis Etienne, and the offense couldn't get going. The offense, the running game was spectacular the first, a couple of weeks with Josh Jacobs just running all over the place. But the passing game has never felt comfortable to me. There are games where Davante Adams has big numbers, but everybody else suffers. And it doesn't have to be that way. It could be where everyone gets a good amount of catches and yards. You could spread it out. I was questioning whether or not Davante Adams was going to see a lot of looks because he'll be double covered, and then you could throw to guys like Darren Waller or Hunter Renfrow. But it has not been effective whatsoever. So I ask you this, Alon, we put a lot of blame on Josh McDaniels to question him. Does there need to be blame on Derek Carr because this is year 8 for him, or actually year 9 with the Raiders, and it's always a growing period. It always is. And, it may not be fair because a lot of guys on the team are just not performing well offensively. Hunter Renfrow doesn't look like the same guy. We'll talk about Darren Waller, and I'll bring up the quotes that he said today. But Derek, there are moments late in that game a week ago against Jacksonville where him and Davante Adams are not on the same page. I don't know whose fault that is. And I also kind of want to see Derek just kind of get angry a little bit. This is frustrating. And then he's never going to be that guy. He's always going to be the team leader and say, go in the post game and go, oh, shucks, we got to get it next week and we'll just keep fighting, whatever. But after 9 seasons, enough's enough. And I always back this guy. I thought the MVP hype was a little much in 2016, but I always thought he played well. And I always supported him. And I thought when Raider fans always say we need to go to a different quarterback or we need Matt McGloin, which I always thought was hilarious in the post game show, I always supported him. I am running out of excuses personally, just because there there's just so many chances that this guy's been given. He's given the contract, and I have a hard time believing that the Raiders will say goodbye to him because they just got him Devontae Adams. Unless Devontae is not really thrilled about playing with Derek Carr right now, but who knows? They've been friends for a long time. I don't know about Derek Carr's future with this team. Every time that they keep losing, or every time that it's just not what it's supposed to be, then I question if it's Derek. There was a short little clip a week ago where Josh McDaniels, the CBS broadcast is going to a break, and Josh McDaniels is frustrated with Derek Carr, pointing to his head, saying, "What were you thinking?" And I would love to see and know what they're talking about. There are times where Gruden was frustrated with Derek. I don't know. I don't know about his future. I would like to think that they thought of, like, I like to think that Josh McDaniels took this job because of him. I like to think that because they got Devontae Adams, that's the guy that they want going forward. I know Mark Davis loves Derek Carr, and he said all the right things and wants to be a Raider for life, and he'd rather retire than go to a different team. But I'm not sure about his future. It's becoming a problem year in and year out where they don't grow.
Yes. So I think the Carr Gruden relationship is a lot better, and it even got off to a better start than the McDaniels Carr relationship. I don't think there's any question about that. I think Derek has said all the right things for the organization during tough times and during good times as well, even though he's only led the team to the playoffs twice. If you said, some blame goes on McDaniels, but some has to go on Carr as well, if I had to, split it up right now, I'd probably go somewhere between 65, 70 on McDaniels and the other 30 to 35 on Carr.
Mm-hmm.
I do know he's learning. It definitely looks like, for whatever reason, it's not just him. They are not like you said, nothing looks comfortable. Everything looks under duress and even when there's no pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Even when a receiver is wide open, they look almost like watch. You're not going to see it a lot on TV, but you'll see it there in person. They're almost not confused, but tentative about what they're supposed to do. Everybody's thinking when they're just supposed to be playing. So that's part of it. As far as Carr's future goes, they did just, they extended him, and I think he plays his contract out. I don't think this is a situation where they can really deal him somewhere. I
But
think
real quick, just they can't get out of this deal.
they can, and I mentioned that earlier. They can get it out with very little dead money. I mean, what is it? Something like $6 million.
Yeah,
It's
whatever it is.
it's
Yeah.
it's really low. So yes, they can get out of it. The one thing I've always told Raider fans is this: who are you going to get that's instantly going to upgrade you right now?
Yeah.
Who is out there that you're going to go get? We just saw the Colts, who they're going to play this upcoming week, hitched their car to the wrong horse,
Yep.
and you saw how that worked out. There's not a lot of other Matt Ryans around that they could possibly get. I mean, who are really your options? We could go down the list. There's nothing that's really that attractive. So your main option is to either maybe trade or sign for someone who's a backup somewhere, who's very young. There's not a lot of that around, or you draft someone. I thought they had a golden opportunity in this past year's draft to get Carson Strong. Carson Strong ends up being the highest paid UDFA of all time, and he gets signed by the Eagles. Now, I thought that would have been a nice story. Kid plays at UNR. He's got a cannon arm. Very good in the Mountain West, same conference that Derek Carr's from. Fresno State's in now, and that would have been a good plan going forward. If Carr's not working out, let's sit him a few games to see what the young kids got. They didn't do that, so judging on what they've done now, even though it's a 2-16, that's right? 2 wins, 6 losses. They got the two. I'm pretty sure it's six
Yes.
losses. So
Yes.
they're two and
That is
16.
the Las Vegas Raiders record right now. It's
Yeah,
2 and
that is the
6.
Las Vegas Raiders record, 2-6 after this Jacksonville loss. So I think with the moves that the front office has made, I think with the commitment that Mark Davis's checkbook has made to a lot of players, that the offensive construction on this team isn't going to change anytime soon. And when I say soon, I mean within the next 2 years. Now, 3 years down the road, yeah, things could be different. Derek will be close to 35, and Devontae will even be up there in years as well. He'll be on the other side of, I think, 33. So, yeah, they don't have a lot of flexibility, Derek. They don't have a lot that they can do offensively right now. They just kind of have to ride with what they have, and they have to hope that Josh McDaniels and Lombardi, the OC, and whoever else is there around these offensive players can crack the code here and get this thing clicking. Because what should be disheartening to Raider fans is this, and to anybody who follows this team or was expecting good things out of them, whether you're invested or not, they went from having a dangerous offense in a lot of respects last year, dangerous in terms of they can come back on you anytime or they could put up some points if they really needed to now where they just it's either it's going to work or it's not going to work. And you find out pretty early in a game nowadays with this iteration of the Raiders whether it's going to work or not. I mean,
Yeah.
for first half of a game, usually you can tell if the offense is going to click or not.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lon. I don't see any changes or drastic changes to the offense. Now, I think they'll probably make upgrades with their draft picks with the offensive line as they should. But yeah, this is the team. I mean, there's so much talent. It's just frustrating when you know there's so much talent and yet they show nothing for it, and that's really on the coaching. It really is. But then like you said, you could put 75% on Josh McDaniels and 25% on Derek Carr. I don't, it's frustrating that Derek is not as good as other quarterbacks in this league, but I respect a lot of what he does. At the same time, it's just, it could just be Josh McDaniels' offense is complex and no one's understanding it in its first season. But I don't think that's a good excuse. I
I
also
don't
think
think so either.
like you had a whole off season, man. You had training camp, and maybe training camp is not what it used to be. But at the same time, they're not alone. The Raiders, the Broncos, the Rams, Chargers are above 500, so I'll take them out of it. But the Colts, the Packers, the Buccaneers, there are a ton of disappointing teams this season. Would you say the?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say I think the Packers are the closest clone to the Raiders right now. If you want to take two teams from separate conferences that just can't get it done, they're pretty like and like.
So, out of all of the hyped up teams this offseason, do you think the Raiders are the most disappointing? It's hard to say because there's so many teams that
it is hard to say. I would say it's very close between the Raiders and the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers are extremely disappointing.
They are, but at the same time, they're 4-5, and because of how shitty their whole defense or the division is, they can still win that and be 9-8 or 8-9 and still make the playoffs.
So then I'll restructure that real quick, Derek. The Raiders are the most disappointing team in the NFL. They added all these marquee players, and they have 2 wins to show for it.
Yeah, and I think the Packers are a good comp. I think that, like you said, if you want to change the quarterback, well, you got to have a good backup plan. And while on paper it sounds like Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan's a good upgrade, but it wasn't. It really wasn't for the Colts. And we'll talk about the Colts a little bit here because that's the Raiders' opponent coming up this week. But just, I don't know, man. It's not just the Raiders. It's the whole NFL, to be honest. I know we talked about this a weeks past, but it's been a disappointing season all the way around. Like, I know there's some good teams. Obviously, the Eagles are exciting. They're still undefeated. I doubt they'll stay undefeated, but they're an exciting team to watch. The Bills are exciting, but let's hope that Josh Allen's injury is not serious. It doesn't sound like it. He may miss this week, but that would be a crusher if we don't see him play to his fullest capabilities. The Chiefs, they're the Chiefs, and, you and I grew up Raider fans, so we hate the Chiefs, but they're fun to watch. I'll admit that. But overall, like, I was watching the Saints and Ravens game on Monday night, and I was bored. And I hate saying that because I wait all season for this shit. And now that it's here, it's just not very good. And that kills me to say that.
And we've talked about it for the last couple of weeks as well. Derek,
we have, and we don't need to go into it anymore.
Yeah, we don't. But it is disappointing because you expect to be that's not just entertained, but you expect to really be impressed by what you're seeing. And there's a lot of games this year where we're just not. And
yeah,
and maybe the one commonality I can find between all the teams that I find very interesting to watch, the Chiefs are definitely one of them. I really like watching Miami.
Yep.
They're all very creative. I think that's one thing, but they all have dynamic players at quarterback. And like the Rams this year, they're not that fun to watch. I mean, Matthew Stafford's either going to throw for a boatload of yards or he's not,
Or a boatload of picks.
or a boatload of picks.
By the
Aaron
way,
Rodgers,
Matthew
yeah,
Stafford in concussion protocol this week, so we'll see if he even plays.
we'll see if he plays. I love watching Buffalo because of what Allen can do. He can do all kinds of things, So the teams with the seems to be with the dynamic play callers right now, and the athletic ability, the really high end athletic ability, are the ones that seem to be putting on the best football. And maybe that's because they can bail their offensive lines out. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It goes hand in
No,
hand.
no, I think that could be the case where we're seeing the back, the old quarterbacks that stay in the pocket is just maybe a thing in the past. And you need more dynamic playmakers that go from side to side. And you don't need you don't need fantastic offensive line protection, even though the Bills get it and so do the Chiefs. But you may need those guys when you have subpar offensive lines like the Raiders or Rams or Bucks or Packers all do, or
Mhm.
even the Colts. Even though on paper the Colts' offensive line is pretty good with Quinn and Nelson, but I don't know what the hell happened to them.
Well, they had to protect Matt Ryan, and I think that was very, very hard. So
Could be the case, but they're having trouble even
with Sam Ellinger,
protecting Sam Ellinger. And Sam, like, listen,
I'm
I
rooting for him. I'm rooting for him, Derek. I'm rooting for Sam Ellinger.
you can if you want to, but I watched the guy at Texas. I never thought he was going to be an NFL quarterback, and now that they're throwing him out there, I'll give you my theory about the Colts in a little bit here when we talk about Jeff Saturday and that whole thing. But real quick, Darren Waller spoke today, and Paul Gutierrez tweeted out his comments about be missing the last few games, and obviously he's saying the right stuff. Like, it's not like I'm doing anything to keep myself off the field willingly. I'm doing everything that I can. It just may not be happening in the timetable that I like for that to happen. So I'm just extending that grace and patience to myself because I really am trying my best to be healthy and go about my process and my routines like I have in the past. I appreciate that, Darren. And it's tough. I understand that athletes try their damnedest to get back on the field when they are hurt. I do not deny that. But it's just a common thing lately. And it happened a year ago, and it's happening again this season. And they just paid him, and you heard rumors, I guess this past week, that the Packers were inquiring about trading for him, even when they were asking about him during the trade for Devontae Adams. I have a hard time believing the Raiders would part ways with Darren Waller, but the injuries are a common thing lately. And when he's healthy, I think he's a top 4 tight end in this league, right behind Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and George Kittle. Not in that order, but he should be one of the best. Honestly, he has the God-given talent to be better than all 3 of those guys. But it's just the fact that his hamstring or other injuries in the past has kept him off the field. And if it continues, I'm not sure how much you can rely on the guy. And again, I am not downplaying the injury. I understand it's a tough injury. A hamstring is no joke, but it's just happening a little too often for my liking.
It's turning into a baseball injury, and what I mean by that is where a small nagging injury or an injury that's not a break or tear, serious tear or anything like that, and the timetable's a couple of weeks, all of a sudden can turn into half the season. That's kind of it happens a lot in baseball, happens in basketball too. And that a lot of that is to have to do with resting players and no reason to risk anything until about halfway through the season. But with the NFL, where every game's so important, with pro football, I mean, yeah, I mean, Darren Waller got the bag this offseason. He got paid a lot of money, and he's not playing, and he's not available, and that is just as bad as not playing well. He's just not playing. So yeah, I'm on the same page as you, Derek. I agree that he's doing everything that he can in his power to get better and to get back onto the field. But right now he's not there, and the Packers were inquiring about him, but I also agree with you that I don't think the Raiders were ever seriously considering dealing him. Now,
Mhm.
if they had a magic ball and said, "Wow, he's going to be gone, and maybe this will continue," then yeah, they would have. But also, we've seen in the past where certain tight ends do get banged up a lot. What's disappointing about Waller is he seems to not be able to play with some of these injuries, like other tight ends have. Like the one that really comes to mind, even though it's a little bit farther back, is Antonio Gates. Gates used to seem to playing with all kinds of injuries. He would be out sometimes, but he played for a long time, and a lot of times he did play through injury. Not asking Darren Waller to do that. A hamstring, if you don't take care of it the right way, it could be really, really bad and it can change a person's career. So
Yeah.
he just needs to get better. The one thing I will say about Darren Waller, he is kind of a thoroughbred. And what I mean by that, I mean, there's not a lot of fat on that body. It's a lot of muscle. Like you said, he's got the God given ability. He's got more ability and more physical talent than just about any other tight end in the league, and a lot of receivers as well. I mean, in some ways, he physically, his stature and everything, he's kind of Calvin Johnson esque, which is kind of funny because they both went to Georgia Tech. But sometimes with some of those guys who are so finely tuned and such athletic machines, if one little thing, a little hitch in the giddy up, and all of a sudden it can turn into a lot of problems. Raider fans, probably they're all thinking right now about Darren McFadden. Same thing. Guys, just a prime tuned athlete, and just little nagging injuries here and there. So I don't know what Waller has to do. It seems like injuries have gotten better with the Raiders over the past couple of years, especially since they moved to Las Vegas. They haven't had to deal with as many crazy injury problems all the time, but Waller has been one of the ones that seems like, especially last year towards the end of the season, and then this year starting things off, just wasn't completely healthy for whatever reason. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know what he has to do to get better. But
You
I
just play one on
do,
a radio show.
yeah, just play one on a radio show. But I do
Or
know
a
that
podcast. Sorry, for whatever reason, I thought we were on the radio right now. Anyway, sorry.
that's okay. We're talking about radio topics, so no, I'm just kidding.
Basically.
But but he just has to get better, and hopefully he is able to. It looks like he won't play this week, so hopefully he plays the next week, and maybe he can finish his season or really start his season strong. But with the standings the way they are, he and the organization shouldn't do anything to rush him back.
No, you're probably right.
And that's probably a killer to hear if you're a big fan, but it's the truth.
No, it's the truth because it's kind of hard at this point to think that they're going to turn it around. It's the first game, okay, you're playing the Chargers, and there's a lot of hype on the Chargers. Khalil Mack, we all know the history with Khalil Mack, but he sacks Derek Carr 3 times. Derek Carr throws 3 interceptions, but yet they're in that game. Then the Arizona Cardinals game, just all-time bad loss in my opinion, and then it just goes on from there. Their only 2 wins are against bad teams, the Texans and the Broncos. So maybe this is just the Raiders. I thought it was just an anomaly, like a few games here or there that haven't showed their real capabilities, but maybe that's just who they are right now. They're just not a good team. They don't have good leadership. They don't have good coaching. This is just what it is. So hopefully they can find a way to dig deep down and beat Indianapolis Colts team that is going to be coached by a guy with no coaching experience. So before we get into this, I just want to preface it by this. Josh McDaniels has a history with the Indianapolis Colts. We all know it going back to the 2018 season. Josh McDaniels accepted the Colts job. For a couple of days, it was reported that Josh McDaniels was going to be head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And then in Bill Belichick fashion, when he was named head coach of the Jets, he said, no thanks, I'm not doing it, and then became the coach of the Patriots. Josh McDaniels told the same thing to what's the Colts? God, I can't blanking on people's names today. Ballard.
Jim Irsay?
No,
Ballard. Yeah.
What's his first name though?
I cannot remember.
Oh damn. Well, anyway, I'll look it up real quick. But he told the Colts GM that he's not going to take the job anymore. He's going to remain with the Patriots and continue to be their offensive coordinator. And I remember Ballard saying in his press conference, the rivalry is back on between them and the Patriots, and they were pissed. They were pissed that he did not take that job. Chris Ballard. Yeah, I knew I want to say Chuck Ballard. I knew it started with a C, but anyway, I'm drained by all this Raider talk. Anyway, because it's just so disappointing. So yeah, Josh McDaniels waited for the right opportunity, and then he took this one with the Raiders, and he's going to play the Colts this weekend. And funny enough, the guy that replaced Josh McDaniels as head coach was God. Why am I blanking on somebody's Frank Reich? Frank Reich is filled in for Josh McDaniels after he turned down the job, and he had a good run. He did a great season with Andrew Luck that first season, and then they were trying to find a quarterback ever since then. And they've gone through a different quarterback each season since Andrew Luck retired. It was Jacoby Brissett, then it was Philip Rivers, then it was Carson Wentz, and this season it was Matt Ryan. And the Matt Ryan experiment did not work. He looked very slow, he looked very old, and they benched him. And I think at some point they got to figure out if they want to bring back Matt Ryan to play, or Nick Foles, who's still on the roster, or maybe they're just trying to lose. So they bench Matt Ryan, and this week was supposed to be Frank Reich versus Josh McDaniels, and it's not going to happen because Frank Reich, just like Josh McDaniels, is having had a disappointing season with the Colts, and he was fired. He was fired Monday, and the Indianapolis Colts have many former head coaches on their roster. They have Gus Bradley, who was obviously the defensive coordinator for the Raiders a season ago. They have John Fox, who was a defensive, consultant. I wasn't even aware he was on the roster, but he is there. And they also have Bubba Ventrone, who is like the guy that stood out at Hard Knocks. He's the special teams coordinator. He's a young, fiery guy. But none of those guys were asked to replace Frank Reich. Instead, Jim Irsay, who is unconventional and kind of weird, he goes with Jeff Saturday, who we all know is the guy that was the center for Peyton Manning for so many seasons, won a Super Bowl with the Colts. We see him on ESPN as an analyst. He is going to be their interim head coach the rest of the way. And when I saw this, I was not shocked because this is it's an owner move that says to me, I need a guy I can trust the rest of the way. And also it kind of says to me, I kind of want to see what happens with this team. And it wouldn't be the worst thing if we lost the rest of the way to get better draft picks and a better future for us. So I understand also not naming Gus Bradley the interim head coach because Gus Bradley wasn't given that opportunity a year ago with the Raiders. Sometimes you just want coordinators to stay in their position because so they can take care of that side of the ball. But this move is rubbing people the wrong way, and I understand that because this is something that we've never seen in the NFL before, a guy with no coaching experience coming in and filling in. Now, this isn't a permanent gig. This is only an interim basis. But this is not something you see in the NFL. You see it in baseball, you see it in basketball, where former players come in and take over the reins. And the only one I think that's been successful at it, really, is Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr was, he was general manager of the Phoenix Suns for a long time, but he had no coaching experience. And he took the opportunity, like the Warriors' two head coaches were Mark Jackson, who had no coaching experience, and then Steve Kerr, who had no coaching experience. But we've all seen the results with Steve Kerr. In baseball, we've seen a few guys here or there that have been successful, player to manager guys. Dave Roberts, he was an analyst for a little while. He played a long time, but he won a World Series. Still kind of finding his way with the Dodgers a little bit in the postseason. But it's just more common. In football, it's hard. I don't think it can be done. I think the Texans have been trying to do it a long time now, where they want to name Josh McCown head coach, but just the public perception would be just too bad, so they haven't done it. Jim Irsay doesn't give a flying fuck about what you think about his public perception. He's going to hire whoever he wants, and it sounds like he called Jeff Saturday during the game when he was deciding to fire Frank Reich and didn't necessarily ask him to be head coach, but was kind of gauging his interest, which is insane to me. And what's really insane to me is the Jim Irsay's press conference the other day. It's probably one of the best press conferences you've seen since Jim Tom Sula was introduced as 49ers head coach. It was just some of the quotes coming out of that press conference, like I don't know how to make sausage, or the quartile quote is fantastic. Like in the past, whatever he said, like in the past 10 years, we've been one of the best quartile teams of that quartile, whatever the fuck he said. It was ridiculous. Regardless, Jeff Saturday is coming in to coach this team the rest of the way. He's coming in to Allegiant Stadium on Sunday to play the Raiders. anything's possible on Sunday. Anything is possible any week, as we see week in and week out. There's just so many weird outcomes in the NFL lately. But you have to believe, Alon, that a Raider team with so much talent can beat this Colts team with Sam Ellinger as quarterback and Jeff Saturday, who I don't know the guy's name. I'm not getting a lot of names right today, but I'm not looking this guy up. They named their offensive coordinator like some very young guy, some 30-year-old kid. And I'm,
Yeah,
kid,
it's the quarterback coach who's never called plays before. Yeah,
exactly.
I know
So
what
so
you're
he- so
talking about.
so, so
Yep.
he's gonna be the guy on Sunday for the Colts. They're a mess, but the Raiders are a mess too. You got to believe that the Raiders will handle business against the Colts this week. You got to believe that, right? I mean, unless something goes drastically wrong, you got to believe the Raiders will handle business against a Jeff Saturday led Colts team.
If if the Las Vegas Raiders do not beat this team by at least 2 touchdowns, something is seriously wrong. And it's not like the Colts are some like awful team roster wise. Offensively, they're impotent, um, especially with Sam Ellinger at quarterback. It just shouldn't work. And defensively, they still have some decent pieces. But if the Raiders aren't able to take it to a team who just fired, who I think is a very head or was a very good head coach, and Frank Reich, it's unfortunate he wasn't able to find his quarterback. And he even made Jacoby Brissett look. I mean, Jacoby Brissett's a professional, but he made him look good at times. So, if they can't beat the Colts at home, then there are major issues, and that doesn't mean all of a sudden the Raiders blow it all up, but Jeff Saturday has never coached at the college level or the professional level. He's coached high school football, which is great. I'm sure he made a big impact on a lot of young kids' lives. But these are professionals he's dealing with now. He doesn't have Peyton Manning as a quarterback. He's rolling in there with a brand new play caller. He does have Gus Bradley, luckily, who's able to have great command over the defense. So he doesn't have to worry about that so much. And his special teams are squared away too. So yeah, I guess it's about as good of a situation you could walk into maybe with for Jeff Saturday. I guess he's got some guys with experience on the staff, but no head coaching experience. He's working for a crazy owner, and we'll see. I mean,
That,
Jim
that
Irsay, he's
that's an
wild.
understatement. That
Yeah, I mean
he's
this. Yeah,
no. I was gonna say that press conference was something. Just Jim Irsay, just saying that Jeff Saturday has all the experience in the world. I believe in him, and yeah.
yeah.
If
I
you're familiar with Joey Molinaro and his impressions, there's a sketch he did with Chris Ballard talking to Jim Irsay that is just it's just genius. It's
I
just him basically just being like, "What do I do when I don't know what to do? I listen to music." And then he starts listening to a bunch of songs that have Saturday in the title, and he's like, "Ah, that's what we need to do. Call Jeff Saturday." Um, so yeah, that's
that
and
that's what he
and
did.
yeah, that's what he did. By the way, the Colts' new offense coordinator, just so I get this right, Parks Frazier. Parks
Mark
Frazier's
Frazier.
the name of the guy. He's 30 years old, a year younger than me, so I'm bitter. But also at the same time, he has coaching experience more than Jeff Saturday, but he's never called plays before, so that's gonna be interesting come Sunday.
It will be. So they're coming in and they've been toothless all season, much as the Raiders have in big parts of their season. But I mean, this is tailor made for the Raiders to win. The Raiders have been favored in a ton of games this year. They're favored once again by about 6.5 points. That line did not change pre or post to Jeff Saturday news. So
Yeah,
that spread's still staying the same. So the Raiders have to figure. Look, they didn't beat Jacksonville. They didn't beat the Saints. You have to beat the Colts. And if you don't, I mean, we're going to see a third iteration of this closed meeting with Mark Davis,
oh
closed
god,
door
yeah.
meeting. Yeah, where Paul Gutierrez with the phones. Another closed door meeting here. So that's not what Paul sounds like, but that's how I'll read it, and I'll go, oh boy, I wonder what's being talked about in there.
Yeah,
It'll basically be Mark saying you can't suck this bad, and that's kind of what they're going through right now. But yeah, the Raiders should be able to win. This would be a great if they. It would be great if they could come out and kind of do what they did with the Texans. I'm not saying it has to be all run game, but they need to have a game where the offense just clicks for 4 quarters, where there's, a couple of quarters where there's 10 plus points and at least a couple more where there's at least a touchdown each. Like they haven't had a game like that. So
No.
I would love to see a performance out of this offense because the defense is what it is. It's bad. They don't have enough. The players aren't there to do what they need to do. And in my opinion, the coaching, the Patrick Graham's defensive scheme's just not working. And his timing is very bad when he calls blitzes. But I want to see a complete game out of the offense. Fuck the whole team. How about just the offense plays a complete game? Every time they get the ball, they're a threat to score. They get past the 50 multiple times. So I mean, this is a game that if you can't win this game as a coach, as Josh McDaniels, someone who's so highly touted for a long time, does have a bit of a bad reputation after the Denver and videotaping, and then the Colts, bailing on that, and then his start with the Raiders here. But if you can't win this game, there are some red flags being raised left and right if you don't have your players ready to win. And this is not a just win the game by 3 points at the end. This is you need to tear the other team apart type of game.
Well, there are things going in the Colts' favor. I would say only one thing is that Gus Bradley knows the Raiders from a season ago. Besides all that, Josh McDaniels is playing the team that he left, and there's motivation for the Colts in that aspect. But at the same time, it's Jeff Saturday. And I've seen the clip that everybody's passing around this today where Jeff Saturday's, he's doing his true, real press conference as head coach and saying, like, I could be terrible at this, or I could be really good. And that's always a great thing to say to your, to the fan base, to the media. Like, I could be terrible at this. And honestly, Jeff Saturday has nothing to lose. He has nothing to lose. He could lose the rest of these games and go back to his job at ESPN. Although, in my thinking, is how can people take you seriously after that? I understand, TV's a different ballgame, but like Urban Meyer now on the Fox Sunday kickoff, or not, sorry, Saturday kickoff with Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and Brady Quinn, he hardly says anything anymore because I don't think anybody takes him seriously for what happened in Jacksonville. You have to be held accountable, so you can't just go back to TV and be like, well, this is what I would do. We saw what you did, and you sucked at it.
Yeah, that could happen to Jeff Saturday. It totally could. I always actually get that same feeling about Dan Orlovsky when he talks on ESPN. I'm like, Dan's giving all these great critiques for all these quarterbacks around the league and what they should or should not do. And I'm like, you're the guy who stepped out of bounds in his own end zone.
Exactly.
Dude. Like, I mean, you're on a perfect team. And, imperfect.
Yeah.
The imperfect team. And, yeah, I mean, there's some beauty in that, but it's hard to take guys like that seriously. I think it's worse, though, for head coaches because everyone knows playing is very tough and head coaching is extremely tough. But for some reason, like you said with Urban Meyer, he doesn't say a whole lot. But also, he's just keeping his mouth shut, waiting for his next big college coaching gig.
Oh, yeah.
Which he will get, and he'll turn that team into a competitor. But with Jeff Saturday, like, yeah, I do kind of like that honesty, and that's probably what everybody's thinking. That team will probably play for him very, very hard in spurts. I don't know if it'll happen this week. It might happen the week after. It could be kind of like after Matt Rule got fired for Carolina. I was expecting them to come out that week. It took a week. But, I don't know what to expect. I mean, is Jeff Saturday going to put signs all over the facility where it says, run the damn ball? That's all they want to do is run the ball because he's an offensive lineman? Or does Peyton Manning come in to talk to the team? Like, but then he's treating them like high schoolers. That's the other thing. He only has high school coaching experience. This could be really weird, and the players might be like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah, I mean, he was going through his resume and saying like, I've been in the playoffs how many times? I've been through, I've been to the Pro Bowl this many times. I've, played with this many Hall of Famers, and that's all well and good, but you still got to come up with a game plan that's going to beat a team. Like, you can't just motivate the hell out of somebody. Like, I'll ask you, Alon, would you rather have a guy that's X's and O's driven or a leader of men? And you could have both. There's obviously guys that are capable of both, but, I mean, Jeff Saturday could be a leader of men, and I truly believe he can. He has before with the Colts. But when it comes down to having a game plan, calling offensive plays, knowing when to throw the challenge flag, knowing when to call timeouts, this is all brand new to him. And, I mean, we thought Nathaniel Hackett was struggling and Brendan Staley. I mean, God, like,
would you rather have Mike Singletary or Kyle Shanahan? Let's put it in the Niner.
You'd rather have Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, but you'd rather have the X's and O's guys.
but but I also think Kyle's capable of leading men as well.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Like you can't be, and I like this guy, but at the same time, he is who he is. You can't be Mark Trestman.
Yeah.
Mark Trestman was not a leader of men, or Rich Kotite, or any of those guys. You got to be able to control a whole locker room. And I'm sure there's guys in the Colts locker room like Stephon Gilmore or Shaq Leonard, um, even Matt Ryan has got to be like, "The hell are we doing here? Are you serious? This is not what I signed up for." Now, they all could like Jeff and respect the hell out of Jeff because he's a well-known guy and very likable. But at the same time, you never coached before, man. Like this is insane. At the same time, if it blows up in the Raiders' face and they lose, this is one of the most awful losses in the history of the Raiders organization. And at that point, you got to be like, Josh McDaniels, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. What are you doing, Josh? And how do you get beat by a Jeff Saturday led team? Back to the X's and O's thing. I obviously you can have both, but at the professional level, there you do want a guy who can outthink his opponents, or at least think on par with them. If it's all motivation but no mental substance behind it, then in terms of, not saying Jeff Saturday's not a smart guy. What I mean is the X's and O's parts of it. The strategy of the game, and the tactics, those things aren't there, then you got a bunch of fired up guys who don't know what the hell they're doing because they're not prepared correctly to do what they need to do because you don't know what they need to do. And
Yeah.
that's why in the pro ranks, you got to have smart people. So it'll be interesting to see what Jeff Saturday does. But echoing you, echoing myself, probably echoing everybody around, like, it should be the most Raider thing ever if they did lose this game. And that would be actually really funny and comical. Like, I would laugh. And but at the same time,
I don't know
it's
if I
like,
would laugh, man. Like I know I say my Raider days are done, but if they lost the Colts, I'd be like, good God,
it'd be
man.
so bad. It would be so bad.
That just is so. And I
Oh
I
yeah.
know like this. We'll play this clip come next podcast if they do lose, but hell, you can't let that happen.
No,
You
you can't.
you just can't. And we'll move on because we talked about the Raiders for so long here. But and I'm losing my mind forgetting guys' names and everything. But like God, it's just draining. Like I I bought into the hype this year. I was with Steven on our season preview show, and I said the Raiders are going to win the division,
Mhm.
and I was excited. I was, and I've kind of distanced myself from the Raiders the past few years just because of everything that went on with my father, and then moving to Vegas. And I bought in again. I'm not saying I was a diehard fan once again, but I was like, I'm excited to see what they do, and it's been disappointing. It's been really disappointing. So that's why I sound frustrated a little bit, but not saying that this is the end. Like you still want to give Josh McDaniels some time to figure things out. I told you, obviously, he needs to do the rest of the season in 6 games next season. If they're not cutting it, then you got the choice to make. But it's been really disappointing. Just to put a
This is
cap
where
on it.
Josh McDaniels turns the corner, and this is where
This
he gets
game,
that. This is where he's like, it's like no one believes in us, which isn't true. Everybody thinks they should win this game, but then he totally convinces them like it's us against the world, and then he turns the corner.
that should be Jeff Saturday's speech.
That is Jeff Saturday's. Yeah, it's also both coaches are going to be giving the same speech. No one believes in us. It's us against the world. Who's
Yeah.
going to buy it? Who's going to buy in more? And if the Raiders don't buy in with a victory of over 2 touchdowns, it's really bad.
Yeah. Let's just go through some games a week ago that happened in week 9. And Alon, I'll say that you got the Thursday night game right once again. You've been really consistently good with that. So you picked the Eagles to win the game, which was not hard. But you picked the Texans to cover, and you got the over. So you were
By a
right on both
point.
fronts. And I was only right about the Eagles winning in the over. I thought that they would lay the points and win, win by the spread, whatever it was at the time. And you got the Texans right with the covers. So you win once again, sir. So I will do something for you. I feel like I owe you a couple weeks in a row. I never planned this out very well because I'll be completely honest. Like doing now a weekday show all the time now, I don't have a lot of time to prepare for this podcast as much as I like to. So I need to one of these weeks do my end of the deal and do some kind of weird challenge for you. So one of these days I'll get back to it. But just Alon, yeah. through the Week 9 games, which one stood out to you the most? But that wasn't a Raider game a week ago that you enjoyed watching.
That I enjoyed watching. I loved watching that Dolphins Bears game. I
That was
also
a lot
thought
of fun. That was a lot of fun.
I thought the Titans Chiefs game was very fun too, just because it seems like the Titans just put up a fight against the Chiefs.
Yeah,
They have no answer for Derrick Henry usually.
yeah, I've been very impressed with the yeah, Ernie wants me to put mayonnaise in my beer. I'm not doing that, Ernie. That sounds fucking disgusting. Um no, no thank you. I've been impressed with the Titans defensively. Uh with going with Malik Willis because Brian Tannehill's been injured. The way they play defense, it's extremely impressive because they have a few big names on the team. You know, Kevin Byard, the safety, Bud Dupree, the outside linebacker. Harold Landry's out for the season. They got Jeffrey Simmons on their defensive front, but they don't have a lot of household names. They get it done week in and week out.
But
Sorry,
is he a household name, Derek? That's what I have to say. But is he a household name?
Is that an old throwback to Tony Kornheiser on Monday Night Football?
Daniel Tomlinson, yeah.
Yep. So it's one of my favorite quotes. It's like, Tony, we're not even thinking about that right now, dude. I love you on PTI, but right now, shut up. Yeah, dude. I've been impressed with the Titans. I think in the end that game went the Chiefs' way just because Malik Willis couldn't throw to anybody. So, and that's just going to happen with an inexperienced rookie quarterback. But Chiefs get the victory in the end in overtime. I like that Bears Dolphins game. Tyreek Hill may break the receiving yardage record. Just week in and week out, he gets a ton of yards, and that offense is just that's good coaching by Mike McDaniel. Just playing to Tua's strengths, like you said, I think a week ago or whatever, or whenever you said it. It's Tua has the same receiving core he had at Alabama, from Jalen Waddle to Tyreek Hill. Just easy, you know. It's nice quick screens. It's nice slant routes. It's pull option read stuff with the same stuff they did at Alabama. It's playing to his strengths. And the Dolphins defense isn't amazing right now. Bradley Chubb had a chance to get a sack on Justin Fields and couldn't make the tackle. But yeah, they just keep scoring and scoring and scoring. So, and I was impressed with Justin Fields a lot. They're using him to his strengths eventually. First couple of weeks of the season, it was a lot of runs. They never threw the ball. And since they played the Patriots, I think they've adapted their offense a lot better. So that was a very good game this past Sunday.
Yeah, it was a solid game, and Justin Fields has been really fun to watch about over the past 3 or 4 weeks. Really, really, I mean that Patriots game he played very well in. And the Patriots kind of gave that away. I thought the Patriots Colts game was interesting just because it was so lopsided, but I think the one that I found most interesting, because that was kind of the question, but I did enjoy watching, was Lions Packers. That was the most interesting game I watched for a lot of reasons. None
How
of them
so?
good. I can't believe that the Packers can only score 9 points. I also can't believe that I'm not like huge on the Lions. I thought they would be better this year because they play really hard and Jared Goff's decent enough. They only scored 15 points. Like, I just don't, and it's not even a question of, oh, good football needs more points, but it was so bad.
Yeah.
And the Packers are just they have no one. It's Aaron Rodgers and no one, it seems like. And it's very hard to watch.
But they do because I think they still have a solid running game. They just choose not to use it. I mean, yeah, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have a lot of options right now, but he played terrible in that game.
He did 3 picks. I will say this.
All in the red zone, too.
Yeah, all in the red zone. And you mentioned the running game. They don't go to it. He was their leading rusher.
Yeah.
He was their leading rusher that game. And I'm sorry, you're not going to win a lot of games. Maybe not any if Aaron Rodgers throws 3 picks and he's your leading rusher.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Joe Mixon scored 5 touchdowns and a rout over the Carolina Panthers, 42-21. Not a lot to talk about in that game. It was just a thorough beatdown from the Bengals to a bad team to the Panthers. Chargers and Falcons, probably there was a lot of close games this past weekend, but interesting game. I thought that the Falcons were going to win that game just because the lack of wide receivers for the Chargers. Keenan Allen's always hurt. Mike Williams is hurt too, so Justin Herbert had to get it done with Austin Eckler and Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter, and they got the job done. And I think Justin Herbert's finally getting healthy. So that, and by the way, Khalil Mack with an amazing play with Drake London just taking the ball away from him right in the red zone. I thought it was a great play. So that was a game that I was watching this past week. Another one that I was very surprised by, the Jets and the Bills. And we'll see about Josh Allen's health. The Bills are just getting kind of, mainly it's Josh Allen, but they're a little cocky lately with the way that Josh Allen's been throwing balls. That early interception to Jordan Whitehead, I thought was just really lazy by him. And, Josh Allen thinking he could get the ball over Sauce Gardner and him just picking it off easily. He did hurt his elbow in the latter portion of the game, and that's a big question mark for this upcoming game against the Vikings. So we'll see about Josh Allen's status come Sunday. But yeah, man, the Jets are just getting it done too by playing really good defense. And Zach Wilson's not lining up on the stat sheet, but they're running the ball and they're checking it down to the right guys. And it's just a very solid win by Robert Saleh and the Jets.
Sauce Gardner was huge in that game with the pick, and then defensively, Whitehead also had the other one that you mentioned. But you get the two picks from those guys, and then you have your, I would say, defensive leader for sure, C.J. Mosley. He played like an animal. I mean, he was
Yeah.
all over the place. I mean, I know he had below 10 tackles, but he had a sack. He was in on nearly, seemed like every play that was inside the box, and he was just, Robert Saleh has those guys clicking, and I know the Bills, like you said, are a little cocky. They also kind of look a little tired too at
Yeah.
times,
Yeah, a
and
little bit.
I think some of that is the fact that they weren't really able to get a run game going during that ball game, but that speaks to how good of a job Saleh and the Jets defense is doing. So, I mean, there's some things that are understandable there. I don't think it's anything to really worry about for the Bills. It's great for the Jets, but yeah, I mean, the Bills just seem a little tired, and they probably just need to refocus and get back into the groove of what they're supposed to be doing. It's as simple as that. I was going to ask you, Derek,
Yeah.
what did you think about Zach Wilson? Because I still don't really know what to think about him. Because he's
Yeah, I
not
don't
lighting
know.
it up.
Yeah, I don't really know either. He threw those 3 bad picks against the Patriots. But yeah, I mean, again, like I'm not really buying the Giants, the Seahawks, and the Jets just yet. I need to see them do it in the playoffs, to be completely honest. I think that they'll be playoff teams, and I need to start buying into the teams that are doing well this season because it's not an anomaly anymore. On a consistent basis, there are a lot of teams that I thought were going to be terrible this season that are playing well, and the teams that I thought were going to be good are just bad. At the end of the day, the Packers are bad. The Raiders are bad, unfortunately. The Rams are bad, and I just need to give into that because every week I'm keep losing in my pick'em leagues because I think that things are going to turn around and they're not. The reality is that these teams are good right now, but I'm not just buying. Their quarterbacks are not great to me. Daniel Jones, I'm not buying really well. Zach Wilson, I'm not buying. Geno Smith is playing well, but I want to see it in the postseason too. So that's what I make of the Jets right now.
Did you watch? I was going to say Vikings Commanders. Did you
Yes,
watch that game? That
yeah,
was a good game.
yeah, that was on. I mean, like honestly, like on Sundays I watch Red Zone, so the big
Okay.
highlights come in, and then I watch them back on YouTube. Even though I got to admit, not to call anybody out, but the NFL.com editing for the highlights, we're missing a lot of plays lately, and a lot of things are out of
Mm.
order, and things are falling through on Sundays. I'll say that, but yeah, as far as the Vikings and Commanders, I picked the Commanders to win that game, and it was looking pretty good for a while. Uh, Taylor Heineke got bailed out by a referee getting in the way of Harrison Smith on that deep pass to Curtis Samuel. But after that, then Taylor Heineke throws the bad interception to Harrison Smith, and the game flipped. And Kirk Cousins throws the touchdown pass, beautiful pass to Dalvin Cook on the sideline. They win the game 20-17, and then Kirk Cousins does the weird thing on the plane. But yeah, I've been very impressed with the Minnesota Vikings this season. I think they're hands down the best team in the NFC North. You don't even think about the rest of the teams. I just don't know about them going forward. Kirk Cousins has proven it before in the postseason, but We'll see if they're the second best team in the NFC. I still think that title goes to the 49ers. I think it's still the Eagles or 49ers atop of the NFC, but very solid win by the Vikings.
Yeah, it was. I was impressed by Kirk Cousins. He didn't have a great completion percentage or anything like that, but he made plays when he needed to. Their defense really coming along strong. One thing I do love, even though they weren't able to run the ball super effectively with Dalvin Cook, they just he's got such a nice complement of playmakers at wide
Yeah,
receiver, and Dalvin Cook is a receiver too when he receives out of the backfield or they line him up like. And then with the addition of T.J. Hawkinson, that's already paying off. I mean, the guy almost
yeah,
had like 100. He had 60 plus yards in the game. So, I mean, that's already paying off for them. They could be scary. It's crazy to think that they only have one loss so far. I mean, they're
yeah.
7-1 now. So,
And that
eh,
one loss is only to the Eagles.
yeah, to the Eagles. So the best team in the NFC right now. So
Yeah,
I mean, they're definitely. I still think the Niners are better than them.
yeah, I agree.
Um, but there's no reason that no one should have them as number three, and they're knocking right on the door.
Yeah, no. The team that's leading the NFC West right now, the Seahawks. I've been impressed by them. Week in and week out, they run the ball. They play good defense. Geno Smith's playing well. He threw that pick six to Zaven Collins for the Cardinals, but to sweep the Cardinals and to be leading the NFC West, I've been very impressed with the job that Pete Carroll has done this season. And yeah, man, the Cardinals. I mean, I think it was a huge mistake to. Uh, I think we got porn bots now in the chat here, so that's fun. But we I Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury should not have been given contracts. I don't think they proved anything a season ago. They made the playoffs, but with the way that season ended, I don't think they should have been rewarded with new contracts. If you were going to ask me what the Cardinals should have done this past this season, I think they should have fired Cliff Kingsbury. But are you really going to do that now? Give him a contract extension? Guys have been fired before with contract extensions, but Kyler Murray's not getting better. And we need to talk about this a week ago, but when he yelled at Cliff Kingsbury on the sideline, calm the fuck down,
Yeah.
and then he yells at DeAndre Hopkins this past week. This guy, man. I mean, I'm kind of over Kyler Murray a little bit. I thought he was a great talent coming into the draft, and he shined a couple of seasons with the Cardinals. But his whole attitude and him, having that addendum in his contract that he needs to study more, and then he's going to yell at the coach and his star wide receiver and think that he's the man. And I remember in that game against the Eagles earlier this season where he slid and didn't pick up the first down. He spikes the ball, and then he's like, "Well, and then Cliff Kingsbury has to take this, fall for that. Just not good leadership skills. I'm not a fan of Kyler Murray. I have yet to watch the Hard Knocks in season thing with the Cardinals, and I'd love to see how his attitude is on that show. But yeah, if it were up to me, I would have fired Cliff Kingsbury after this season, and then you got to make the move on Kyler Murray if you think he's your franchise quarterback going forward.
Kingsbury's a curious case because the knock on him
The
is that he's
curious
always
case of Kingsbury.
yeah, that he's always. I like that. It could be a documentary or a mockumentary. You could play all the parts, Derek. But
No,
he
that'd be a lot of work.
but he the knock on him is he's kind of failed upwards, and he's gotten to this point now, and he's got this very talented quarterback. But yeah, Kyler Murray, it's just yeah, you're very scared of his skills and his ability and everything, but on a consistent basis, he's just not. Like you said, his leadership's not there, and he's just not consistent. It could be a flash in the pan. We don't know. He's still super young, but um, to the other side, the more interesting team, the Seahawks, Pete Carroll, Coach of the Year, right? I
Oh,
mean,
hands down.
with this roster that he has, and then playing with Gino, basically saying, and we've talked about it before, but yeah, see you, Russ. That's fine. Okay, we're rolling with Gino.
Yeah,
We made a true trade for Drew Lock. We'll have Drew Lock on the roster just in case. Geno Smith has the job and he's doing great. They're running the hell out of the ball with Walker. I would say their biggest weakness probably right now. I do like that they have Noah Fant because the Seahawks are generally pretty good when they have a decent tight end. But they don't have besides Metcalf. He's their big weapon. I know Lockett's a down the field kind of guy, but Lockett, if he could just kind of be more consistent himself with his hands, I think they would be very, very tough to stop as the season winds on. Over halfway through here now. But he has some times where Gino puts the ball right on him and he just drops it. It's like, man,
Yeah.
this game could get busted wide open if he just catches that. Happens to everybody, but there's really not a lot of flaws with that team outside of, oh, could you imagine if they had a super, super good quarterback now? Or
Yeah.
could you imagine if they had someone on par with DK Metcalf on the other side, or even close to him on the other side? So, yeah, I mean, they're just good. Pete Carroll's maybe doing his best coaching job
Oh,
in his
yeah.
NFL career for sure.
And the big game from this past week, but on paper, it's two teams below 500, but it was a playoff rematch. The Rams and Buccaneers, and that was a hard game to watch. Good defensive play by the Rams and Bucks, but also just a lot of bad offense too. It was a mix. Like I'll admit, like the goal line stand by the Rams in the end zone was great. And then, of course, Tom Brady does his thing. They give the ball back to the Buccaneers, and they go right down the field, and Tom Brady scores the winning touchdown to Chad Auden, I think was the guy's name, or Cade Auden, whatever his name. But
Yeah, Cade.
yeah. And I understand Jalen Ramsey's frustration with saying that once we make that goal line stand, 4th and goal, and I bet the ball down, that should be the end of the game. And their offense can't pick up a first down. Cooper Kupp may have slid too early on that play. Just it's alarming to me how bad the Rams' offense is. And to blame their offensive line really, but they have no running game to speak of. It's very similar to the Raiders, and this is not making the case for the Raiders any better, but just a lot of teams are bad offensively this season for whatever reason. But yeah, that was a bad loss for the Rams. I still think they could turn it around. I don't know if Odell's going to sign them with them anymore. It sounds like he wants to go to a team that's winning right now. So the favorite sounds like the Cowboys, but yeah, good win for the Buccaneers to get off their 4-game losing streak or whatever it was, or 3-game losing streak. But bad loss for the LA Rams, and they may lose Matthew Stafford for this week.
Yeah, bad loss for the Rams, and then you got the Stafford questions. You took the words right out of my mouth regarding the Rams and their offense. I mean, they can't run the ball right now at all, which is something that the Raiders had been doing recently, but they are similar to the Raiders. They're just not performing the way offensively that you thought they would. And they almost have the same problem. Like Cooper Kupp ate up a lot of targets and a lot of catches this past week and had a ton of yards, went over 100, had a touchdown and everything. But then you look at everybody else, there's just nothing there. And so, virtually, over nearly half the completions or targets at least are to Cooper Kupp, and then everybody else isn't eating. So they got some issues. Sean McVay will figure that out. But we've talked about this before as well. They mortgaged everything on this year, next year, whatever on last year. They got the job done. So I'm sure they're not happy they lost, but I'm sure they'll make that trade anyway. They
Yeah,
don't
no.
they don't really care at the end of the day. For Tampa though, I mean, they needed it in the worst way, and they're in that division where everybody's 4-5, and just a few wins. There could be a 9-win division winner out of that division.
Or 8
Yeah.
and 9.
Or 8 and 9, which I don't want to think about because I just don't like that when losing teams get to win their division
No, I'm not a
or
fan
go
of
to
that
the
either.
wild card. I'm not a fan. And speaking of Seahawks, what they were the ones to go
No,
and win a game. Who
Panthers.
did it last? Panthers.
No, wait, I'm even wrong about that. It was the Panthers. They were 6-9-1 at one point and won a wild card game against the Cardinals. But no, the last team to be a losing team and win their division was the Washington football team back in 2020.
Washington football. I forgot about 2020 already.
Yeah,
But yeah,
if you remember that game with the Buccaneers, they were on the road to face Taylor Heineke and the Washington football team.
at the time, yeah, Washington
Yeah.
football team. So okay, but I don't like seeing that. So
No, I don't like it either.
hopefully someone wins that division outright. But actually, I thought it was a pretty solid slate of games this week. There were a few clunkers, and probably the biggest was Packers Lions, or maybe actually Ravens Saints. That was maybe the worst game.
Yeah, like I said, man,
Highlighted by being prime time.
yeah, I mean, like I said, like that game was boring to me, and it was, as they put it, bye Mageddon with 6 teams on a bye week. So it wasn't that great of a slate, in my opinion. But you only hope the football gets better. You only hope the football gets better from going from here. Real quick before we get out of here, Alon, you're able to bet and gamble in Las Vegas. That's what Vegas is known for. and you see a lot of, you know, ads for gambling on NFL games and, sports apps and all that shit. And it's becoming more prevalent. You see it on NFL Network. I was working at NFL Network a year ago, and now that we have betting lines on the bottom of the screen, it's still baffling to me. I don't know about the future of sports gambling in California. So yesterday was election day, and everybody was voting for very important things. And I don't know if sports gambling is very important, but I would love it to be a part of California because so many states are doing it. And not only did Prop 27 not pass, it was killed. The numbers for no were 83%. Over 4 million people voted no, and barely a million voted yes. And it was 17% for that. I don't know what the future holds for sports gambling in California. I'm kind of surprised that people don't want to do it. I understand the reservations about, giving money towards that and everything. I don't know about the whole brick and mortar system in California. I think it's easy just to have it on your phone and have it be accessible that way. But yeah, I was kind of shocked. I'm not shocked that it didn't pass, but I was shocked that just how, you know, overall, most people in California say no to sports gambling. And the ad campaigns were stupid of just like, oh, then, your young kid could have a sports, that their phone turns into a sports, thing where you can gamble on sports. They're going to become a gambling addict. There's porn on phones too.
Yeah.
Your 6-year-old could be a porn addict for all you know. So I don't know. I thought it was just kind of alarming that so many people in California say no to sports gambling.
I think it's ridiculous. I have a pretty hard stance on this. I think the whole thing is ridiculous. It's an activity that you have to be 21 and older to do. The whole I saw those ads. Every device will get your kids addicted. I'm like, your kids are buying Fortnite skins and Call of Duty this, and you can watch porn on your freaking phone. So give me a break. California, it's amazing. They were going to impose a 10% tax on the gambling revenue. And there's very few taxes that California looks at and doesn't like. So that was interesting to me that they didn't pass that. But 83% to only 17. I mean, that's incredible. And another factor about this too is this was going to be done via apps. So the apps that were going to be able to be used, or the places if you bet physically, they're all going to have agreements with Native American tribes in
Yep.
California. And that's not that this is a politics show, but that's a population in the United States that gets overlooked a lot and really gets shafted quite often. So
Yep.
that's a resource for them. That's a revenue resource for them. They're competing with other casinos and offshore books around. Wouldn't you just want to keep that in California? I mean, it's just another opportunity. Basically, it's sad because sports betting, it's a huge market. The NFL has really staked their flag down in LA, and NFL has seen their revenues increase massively because of sports gambling, and as well as the other leagues. So I don't know. I think it's dumb because it's an activity that people are going to do one way or the other, but they're just going to be doing it illegally in your state. They're going to be using, I don't know what the mybookie.com, all those kinds of
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah.
And you can access those on the
Steven
internet.
knows.
Yeah, Steven knows. So
I'll ask Steven on Sunday how he gets his bets through.
to me, it just doesn't make any sense. So it sucks if you want to wager and have it be convenient for you in the state of California. You out of luck right now, and judging by those numbers, maybe a while. I just don't. Real quick, I don't want to harp on the ad because I've seen that ad so many times on YouTube when I was living in California for the summer doing baseball. But the whole thing of your kid could just log on, and I'm like, your kid has to have a driver's license or an ID that says they're 21. They have to register. There's all these steps.
They also need a goddamn credit card.
They need a damn credit, yeah, or a bank account. All these things. So I think it's stupid, and eventually it'll get flipped. Last thing I'll say about it, it's amazing. California is such a progressive state when it comes to doing things that are on the cutting edge or things like that. And this one seems like a layup, and they're like, boink. They just don't want it. So whatever.
I don't get it. I think that people just saw the ad campaigns and gave in, and it's just stupid.
Power of marketing.
Power of marketing. Alon, thank you for joining me, man. I know that my brain was kind of scrambled during this whole thing of just not remembering certain names, and I gotta admit, I'm pretty tired with the
Yeah.
long days of work. But thank you for joining me for this
Yep.
this long Raider therapy podcast.
Oh, of course, Derek. And real quick, we didn't make our Thursday night pick.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for always reminding me. Let me look that up real quick.
I only remind you because I've been winning lately. If I was losing, I'd be like, "Yeah, there's no Thursday game."
Fair enough. Well. I mean, it's easy to forget the Thursday night game coming up because this one I am I am not interested in this one, my friend. Falcons at Panthers. I get the spread in line. I mean, ugh, like,
It's a tantalizing matchup.
well, like like I hate admitting that because Steven, when I argue about you can't have a bad football game. I still think that way, but I'm still gonna watch because it's football. But like, this is not a good sell at the same time, and I'm sure there's gonna be many jokes made by Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit come tomorrow. But just as far as this game, it's the Falcons at the Panthers. The Falcons are favored by 2.5 points, and the over/under is at 42. You got PJ Walker still starting for the Carolina Panthers. I don't know about that one. And yeah, Falcons coming off a loss against the Los Angeles Chargers, but they played them very well. Alon, how do you see this game going?
I like the Falcons to cover, so they'll win. I think the total's the hardest part about this game. PJ Walker's starting again for Carolina. You know what? The last time these two teams played, what was that, week 8?
Yeah, high scoring.
Yeah, it was surprise scoring.
They
I'll take
just
the over.
played.
Yeah, they just played. They just played a couple weeks ago.
It feels like DJ Moore just took his helmet off.
yeah. They just hit that Hail Mary. So I'll take the Falcons to cover, and it's just the 2.5, and I'll take the over.
Taking the over, okay.
That's about the chalkiest pick that I've made all season on the Thursday night picks.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Sometimes you gotta go chalky. I'm gonna take the Falcons to win. I'm gonna lay the points. And because it's Thursday night and it's PJ Walker, even though they scored a lot of points with PJ Walker 2 weeks ago, I'm gonna go under on the 42.
That's a smart play.
Yeah. Wish I could do it for real. I mean, you can. You just got to know the right resources. Anyway, Alon, thank you for putting up with me today, and thank you for all of you putting up with me today. Even though it was a good show, I loved it. And thanks to actually, I don't know who I'm thinking, but thanks to Steven. We'll see him on Sunday. So thanks to you, Steven. Alon, if you want to do the honors, say what we say, my friend.
Just your opinion, man.
There you go.